In the Strait of Hormuz, there's a weapon that doesn't need radar, speed, or artificial intelligence to be formidable. It just needs to lie still at the bottom of the sea. An Iranian torpedo might only be worth a few $1,000s. But if it's in the right place, it's powerful enough to tear apart a modern warship, shut down the world's most vital oil lines, and force the U.S. Navy to slow down, knot by knot, to hunt it down. So the question is, how could the US find 6,000 torpedoes in Hormuz when many of them are virtually invisible to conventional detection methods? The answer is a completely different kind of war than what one typically imagines a modern navy to be like. Not a war of aircraft carriers and missiles first, but a war of sonar, lasers, mine-hunting robots, and scans so slow that time seems to stand still. Today, we're going to take apart the entire American mine-clearing ecosystem to understand why, in the 21st century, a classic sea mine can still be Washington's biggest nightmare in Hormuz. To understand why Washington is so concerned, we must discard outdated preconceptions about naval mines. These are no longer the black iron spheres waiting to be touched before exploding, as seen in World War II films. What Iran is laying in the Strait of Hormuz is a completely different generation of weapons. Influence mines. The greatest threat in the strait isn't the cruise missiles whizzing overhead, but the killer computers lying dormant on the seabed. They don't need to make contact. They just need you to exist. Imagine this mine as a patient hunter. It has no eyes, but it has ears and incredibly sensitive senses. It constantly reads the physical signals of the surrounding sea. But this is what keeps American military experts awake at night, its ability to program logic. This mine can be commanded to count. It will bypass the lead minesweeper, ignore the second escort vessel, and only activate itself when the most valuable target, an oil tanker or aircraft carrier, appears. You can pass it safely dozens of times, creating a false sense of security until its microprocessor decides you are the programmed target. Because it lies dormant at the bottom of the sea and emits no signals, it completely bypasses all US early warning systems. While the Aegis radar is busy searching for threats in the sky, right below the ship's keel, death is silently counting down. Look here. This is the pinnacle of war technology, the Aegis combat system. It can track hundreds of targets simultaneously, from supersonic cruise missiles to stealth aircraft hundreds of miles away. But right now, as it crosses the waters of the Hormuz, this entire system, worth over $2 billion, is completely blind. Radar can't see through water. Conventional anti-submarine sonar only focuses on large, moving objects. The US may master the skies, but at the bottom of the Hormuz, the rules of the game have changed. Your system isn't designed to find an explosive rock. When super steel battleships are forced to halt for fear their own magnetic fields will detonate underwater traps, the US Navy is forced to unleash its strangest ace, the Avenger class. In the age of carbon fiber and super steel, the US still maintains ships with hulls made entirely of wood and fiberglass. Why? Because Iranian influence mines are hungry for magnetic fields, steel is a death sentence. Wood is a cloak of invisibility. This isn't a warship in the conventional sense, Dada. It's a survival tool, a surgeon on a minefield. Inside the USS Avenger, sonar operators aren't searching for red dots on radar screens. They're doing something far more difficult, reading shadows. The US isn't sending people down first. They're sending a robotic system that will approach, verify the target, and perform a single task. Place a devastating explosive charge next to the mine, and then withdraw. But it has a weakness. It's constrained by control cables, and has an extremely short range. It can only process what it sees directly. If underwater detection is too slow, the US will switch to forcing the mine to reveal itself from the air. This is the influence sweep technique. This device will simulate a massive magnetic field and the roaring engine sounds of a 300,000-ton oil tanker. It tricks the mine's electronic brain, making it think a lucrative target has arrived and causing it to detonate under the helicopter's feet. You don't search for the mine, you force it to commit suicide. To understand why Iran's 6,000 mines could hold back a billion-dollar fleet, we must look at how they were deployed. Iran didn't lay mines according to military textbooks. They deployed them using a tactic analysts call calculated chaos. Iran didn't place mines in open areas. They deliberately dropped Maham, 7 mines into areas with complex seabed topography, near sharp reefs, underwater debris fields, or old shipwrecks. Why? Because in acoustic physics, these objects create enormous background noise. When US sonar scans, the reflected signal from a fiberglass mine will be mixed with the signal from a rock or a rusty metal block. Iran is using the Earth's terrain itself to conceal its weapons. Iran created a multi-layered matrix. The anchored mines, Maham 3, in the mid-water layer, forced minesweepers to move extremely slowly to avoid collisions. But as they slowed down to deal with the upper layer, they fell right into the optimal sites of the bottom layer of mines, silently, counting the sound signatures of the engines just below. This is a geometric trap. You can't deal with one layer without making yourself vulnerable to the next. The most terrifying thing wasn't the mines themselves, but the lack of data. By randomly laying mines from fast boats, Iran cut off the predictive capabilities of search algorithms. The US Navy couldn't use logic to deduce where the next mine was located. They were forced to abandon all guesswork and revert to the most primitive method, sweeping every square meter, leaving no gap untouched. Iran transformed the Strait of Hormuz from a maritime corridor into a giant, chaotic library, where the US had to search through every page of explosives without any index. Let's dispel the public's biggest misconception. The US Navy doesn't simply turn on its sonar and see mines appear like in a video game. In the murky, noise-filled waters of the Hormuz, a fiberglass influence mine is virtually electromagnetically invisible. The truth is, the US isn't hunting a visible target. The US is hunting for topographic anomalies. A mine doesn't need to be visible to be hunted. It just needs to make the seabed look wrong, and that's when the hunt begins. Step 1, search the geometry. Before clearing mines, the US needs to know what the seabed should look like. They create a geometric map accurate to the centimeter. Any additional protrusions or depressions that appear the next day, even just a sand ridge, are marked in red. Step 2, find the anomaly. High-resolution sonar scans for acoustic shadows. A natural rock casts a fragmented shadow, but a Maham 7 will cast a calculated, geometrically shaped shadow that doesn't match the terrain. Step 3, interrogate the contact. Underwater drones, or MH-53E helicopters, will approach the suspected area. They don't just look, they interrogate it by emitting simulated magnetic and acoustic signals, forcing the object beneath to reveal its true nature. Step 4, classify before kill. The US must determine, is this a real mine, metal debris, or just a submerged rock before making a decision to neutralize it. Neutralize. A mistake at this step can waste precious hours. The paradox lies here. An influence mine may be invisible to surface radar, but it cannot be invisible to a multi-layered search ecosystem. Its very efforts to hide, such as using a fiberglass casing to counteract magnetism, create a strangely dense void at the bottom of the sea. In the eyes of NMCM, nuclear mine action experts, that void is like a thief's fingerprint left at a crime scene. The US doesn't need to see the mine to know it's there. They just need to find the hole the mine has drilled into the natural structure of the seabed. Lasers scan incredibly fast, but they can't penetrate the murky sediment of the Hormuz. Sonar is highly sensitive, but it can't distinguish a clever mine hidden behind a rock crevice from a harmless boulder. Drones are tossed about by the strait's strong currents, control cables entangled in coral reefs. This is the harsh truth that Washington rarely mentions. No single system can handle 100% of the risks on the seabed. When technology reaches its limits, when billion-dollar sensors become useless, the entire multi-billion-dollar Operation Epic Fury now depends on the most fragile yet resilient link, humans. Meet the Explosive Ordnance Disposal, EOD divers, the US Navy's last line of defense's sensors. When the machinery stops, they begin their journey into the zone of death. To stand here, they must undergo 3 years of rigorous training with an elimination rate of up to 50%. These are not ordinary divers. They are explosives, specialists, capable of anticipating death under the pressure of water tens of meters deep. Imagine their working environment. The water is so murky that visibility is zero. You can't see your own hand in front of you. The current is so strong it can tear through your breathing mask. Extreme temperatures make your body shiver every minute. In that absolute darkness, all theories about lasers and sonar are worthless. EOD divers approach the mine by touch. They use their hands to feel the shape of the sensor horns, determining whether it's a contact mine or an impact mine. A millimeter off, a touch too hard, or even a moment of anxiety can trigger an explosion that wipes out everything within a 50-meter radius. Once identified, they must place the charge at the mine's weak point. Every action must be extremely precise and silent. Then comes a race against time to swim to safety before the detonation order is given. When technology stops, humans become the last remaining sensors. Not because they are more advanced than machines, but because they possess something AI has never had: instinct and courage to confront the invisible. In the world of modern warfare, precision always comes at a huge price. And this is where Iran sets its strategic trap. They don't need a perfect minefield. They just need one complex enough to force the US Navy to expend 1,000 times more resources to deal with it. The US Navy is using a $2.2 billion destroyer to hunt for mines that cost less than a used car. Every second the destroyer has to travel at 3 knots is a second this complex system is being worn down in the harsh saltwater environment. Iran isn't trying to sink US ships with mines. They're trying to sink US budgets and patience with their slowness. The more advanced the technology, the more it demands pure data. To find the Maham 7 fiberglass mine, the AQS-20 sonar had to push its resolution to the maximum. But in physics, resolution is inversely proportional to the area covered. To see extremely clearly, you have to see extremely narrowly. The US can find landmines, but they have to scrutinize every square meter of the seabed, like using a microscope to scan a football field. That's why technology doesn't make it faster. It only makes it possible, but at an extremely high cost in terms of time. The biggest error isn't in the machines, but in the human fatigue of processing terabytes of data without error for months on end. This is the crucial connecting point. When machines reach the limits of data analysis and budgets reach their limits of endurance, the system will find its ultimate solution: the instinct of an EOD diver. In mine-clearing warfare, 99% is not considered a success, because that remaining 1% is the breaking point of the entire system. Imagine the worst-case scenario. Sonar misses due to terrain interference. Drones fail to see it because of the current, and EOD divers inadvertently glide past it in murky water. The mine is still there. It hasn't disappeared. It's just waiting for the right signature to awaken. A missed mine doesn't just sink a ship. It sinks confidence. The moment a US warship, a symbol of protection, explodes in a channel that had been declared safe, the entire architecture of Operation Epic Fury will strategically collapse. This is where the chain of collapse begins. At this point, Iran doesn't need to fire another missile. A missed mine has altered the behavior of the entire world. The US may have the most powerful firepower, but they are losing the war on time control and uncertainty. Modern warfare doesn't take place where the most powerful weapons are displayed. It takes place where the most complex systems begin to fail due to the slightest error. When machines are blind and humans are exhausted, that's when the trap of Hormuz truly comes into play. There's a common misconception among the public. Find the mine, destroy it, and that's it. But at Hormuz, that logic is a trap. In the world of global shipping and insurance, cleared and safe are two concepts billions of dollars apart. Finding a mine is a technical victory, but getting the oil tanker to dare to turn back is the real victory. Why can't the US Navy declare it safe immediately? Because they face 4 insurmountable probability barriers. The 1% shadow, no sonar system or diver can guarantee 100% accuracy. In a 4-2 square nautical mile corridor, a 1% error means a 200,000-ton oil disaster is imminent. Mine drift. Mines in the Hormuz don't stay still. The extremely strong tidal currents turn the seabed into a dynamic entity. An area you cleared this morning could contain mines again tomorrow morning due to currents carrying them from uncleared areas. The counter logic. Maham 7 isn't just explosives. It's a logic machine. It can be set to skip the first 5 ships and only detonate on the 6th. This makes any verification process ambiguous. Did you just pass through a safe zone? Or did you just trigger another step on the death counter? The confidence barrier. Oil tankers don't follow government pronouncements. Oil tankers follow the level of risk that ship owners and insurance companies in London accept. A strait doesn't reopen once the last mine is destroyed. It reopens when people believe the next mine is unlikely to be there anymore. Iran isn't just planting mines underwater. They're planting costs, fear, and distrust into the very algorithms of the market. The US is fighting the object on the seabed, but they're winning the battle for the psychology of those who hold the lifeline of the global economy. Finding a mine is a technical victory. Getting the oil tanker to dare to return is the real victory. By this point, we understand what landmines are, how the US hunts them, and why humans remain the ultimate censor. But here's the real flip-flop. All those scanning efforts aren't enough if the market doesn't believe. At Hormuz, Iran didn't just plant mines in the water. They planted cost, fear, and distrust directly into the algorithm of the global shipping market. For a strait to truly come back to life, it must pass 3 independent layers of verification, none of which can replace the other. Layer 1, political, war ends. This is the easiest layer, just a signature at the negotiating table. Layer 2, physical, mine clearing. This is the layer of sonar, EOD, and sweat. It transforms the danger zone into a manageable zone. Layer 3, economic. This is the decisive layer. The Hormuz only opens when this layer is unlocked. Every voyage through the Hormuz after the war was a probabilistic calculation by insurance companies at Lloyd's of London. A mine might never explode, but if its presence was enough to triple insurance premiums and turn ship owners around, then that mine was still performing its combat mission. Ship owners would ask, is a $200 million shipment worth the 1% margin of error of the US Navy? Tanker captains would look back at the 1,987 millivolts Bridgeton incident and wonder, who will be the first to go? Iran has succeeded in creating a weapon with a strategic lifespan far longer than military conflict. The question is no longer how many mines the US Navy can find, but rather, how many must they destroy, and to what extent must they demonstrate safety before the international insurance system accepts lowering the risk assessment? Finding a mine is a technical victory. Making the world believe that the Hormuz is safe is the real victory. Therefore, until the first oil tanker crosses the strait without causing another market panic, the battle on the seabed of the Gulf is never truly over. Let's look back at the ecosystem we've just traversed. Arleigh Burke-class carriers control the skies, but blind underwater. Avenger-class carriers, safe but hopelessly slow. Drones and helicopters, modern but full of terrain blind spots. EOD divers, top-notch but the most vulnerable link. There are no perfect weapons. No system is absolute. At Hormuz, victory doesn't belong to the one with more carriers. It belongs to the one who understands their own limits, accepts the friction of the battlefield, and is resilient enough to survive the system's breakdowns. Because ultimately, in this life or death game, the only thing separating the world from economic catastrophe isn't AI algorithms, but the will of the people touching death at the bottom of that pitch black abyss. Thank you to our partners for accompanying Navy Codex.